me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Washington makes another free agency move, not one that we were expecting, not at a position that we were expecting. If something else were to get done, maybe running back, maybe corner, maybe offensive line, not defensive tackle, not exactly the position we thought they would still be looking to address. Now, I will say this. You've got two guys coming off of major surgery in the offseason, coming back to this team as young players that we really like, and Phidarian Mathis coming off of an ACL tear, and John Ridgeway coming off of a torn pec that he sustained in the final game of the season versus Dallas. So with that said, both guys are expected to be ready for training camp. And while you expect them to be ready, you're not absolutely 100% sure that they're going to be ready. With that said, I think they're adding another body for camp. Somebody's got to take reps in practice. Somebody's got to, play in these preseason games. You're not going to be putting a ton of mileage on John Allen and Daron Payne in the preseason, right? And so Abdullah Anderson, who they signed, a 4-year veteran, undrafted out of Bucknell, is a guy that I think they're bringing in here. Going to throw some more depth at the position. But honestly speaking, if all things go the way that we expect them to go, this guy isn't going to make the team. I don't think this is a signing that we need to read too much into other than, hey, just bring another body in here that we like in the event that something goes awry. And you can never plan for these things. You never can be sure of anything. Expect the unexpected in the NFL. I mean, we drafted Phidarian Mathis in two possessions into the game, 2 series. He's down for the season. So they're just, I think, preparing themselves in the event that one of these guys isn't ready for camp. You're going to need camp bodies regardless because, again, as I just mentioned, you're not putting a bunch of mileage on the Bama wall in the preseason. So I went back and looked at the defensive tackle position each of the last 3 years under Ron Rivera. And each and every single year, Washington kept 4 defensive tackles, but 9 defensive linemen, which is usually how they group it together. They don't usually separate them DNs and defensive tackles, although you can separate them, but they usually clump them together as an entire unit, the defensive line, and it's usually 9, okay? And that breakdown is usually 5 defensive ends, 4 defensive tackles. We've talked about this already. Even this offseason, we've talked about it. And I talked about how we're done, which is why this was a surprise to me. We're done on the defensive line. As far as I'm concerned with the re-signing of F.A. Obata, I thought that completed the cipher on the defensive line because now you've got 5 defensive ends with Chase Young coming back into the mix. Remember, he wasn't here last year. He wasn't a part of the final 53-man roster last year, okay? But because he's back into the mix, you've got Chase Young, Montez Sweat, James Smith-Williams, Casey Toohill, and then the re-signed F.A. Obata. So that's your 5 defensive ends, okay? Again, Shaka Toney, I think, made the team last year because Chase Young wasn't available. I think Shaka Toney may be the odd man out. Now, again, if they trim off fat at another position and feel comfortable keeping Shaka Toney on the roster for special teams purposes, go right ahead. But the likelihood is if they've got the proper amount of linebackers, which they haven't had each of the last 2 years, then you won't have a guy like Shaka Toney making the football team now with Chase Young back in tow. Now, again, anything can happen, but those are the 5 defensive ends. If they stick with the trend of the last 3 years, which I assume they're going to do, you're going to carry 5 defensive ends and 4 defensive tackles. We know the 4 defensive tackles: Payne, Allen, Mathis, Ridgeway. That's it, right? So Abdullah Anderson doesn't really fit into this equation at all. Now, again, they could, surprise us and go 10 defensive linemen, right? And trim off fat somewhere else. Maybe trim off an offensive lineman, maybe trim off a linebacker, maybe trim off a safety or corner. Those aren't positions you really want to trim off fat at, and you really don't want to get rid of guys that you think you can sneak through waivers and get back onto the practice squad because, it ain't safe, it ain't safe, it ain't safe, it ain't safe Ask the Dallas Cowboys with John Ridgeway last year. They thought they could sneak him onto their practice squad, and we came and scooped him up, right? It's not safe. So if you really like a guy, they probably need to end up on your 53-man roster. So the likelihood is we've got our 4 defensive tackles. We've got our 5 defensive ends. We've got our 9 defensive linemen. And Abdullah Anderson is insurance. That's what I look at him as, an insurance policy. He's not a needle mover. He's a big body inside. He's not overly athletic. He's solid, right? Again, I wouldn't read too much into this move. I think he's a guy that's here for depth purposes, and I fully expect him to not be on this roster when it's all said and done. Again, assuming health, which it's hard to do in this league, but assuming health, I don't think he's going to ultimately be on this roster, but we will see. One little side note, I have to bring this up. This is the last time we're going to talk about this because I've already made what's the saying? I always mess this thing up. What is it? I don't know what it is. It's something ant hill, ant hole out of a mole. I don't know what the hell it is, but I've made this situation bigger than what it's supposed to be. Okay. But I kind of figured this was going to be the case. The Cole Holcomb deal, it essentially, Ben Standig had a tweet about the particulars of the deal, and it's essentially a 1-year deal in Pittsburgh. I mean, they can get out of it after 1 year. I said the same. Did I not say, like, couldn't we have crafted a deal where you could have gotten out of it after 1 year? And you know what I'm hearing from a lot of people, and this could be true. And someone brought this up on the live stream the other night, and I kind of casually dismissed it, but he has been injured 2 out of his 3 years under Ron Rivera and company. And someone had said that they were frustrated with him because, remember, we were led to believe that this was not a significant injury, that he would be back in 2 or 3 weeks, and then it turned into something else, and then ultimately he needed surgery, and then he missed the rest of the season. And maybe they were frustrated. Maybe it was something that he could have played through, like the doctors told Ron and the staff, hey, he can play through this, right? If he wants to, it's a pain tolerance thing. He can play through this, but it needs surgery, but it's not going to get any worse. And Cole is thinking to himself, well, I don't want to put bad tape out there. This is my contract year. If I go out there, play through this injury, suck ass, you don't re-sign me. People are watching this tape and thinking, this guy sucks. I could play myself out of the league. So I'm going to do what I think is best for me and my future. I'm going to get this surgery done. And I'm sorry, I won't be back the rest of the season, but that's what's in the best interest of me and my future. Maybe that's what happened. And someone kind of alluded to that during the live stream. And maybe there's a little bit of that. Look, it's not like they had no interest in Cole. According to John Keim, there was interest in bringing him back. There was dialogue between the two parties. It sounded like everything was good at the end of the year when they did the exit interviews and Cole spoke, and it sounded like he was going to be back. But it seemed like they were squabbling over, money, and it's probably a couple mil here or there. Cole felt like maybe he deserved a little bit more. Maybe they felt like he deserved a little bit less, and they couldn't come to terms. Maybe, just maybe, you guys are right, and maybe the injury situation really bothered them, and they just said, look, either you'll take what we're offering you or you can move on because we can't count on you to stay healthy. Maybe that was their stance on it as well. I don't know. Just felt like he could have been here for the money that he's getting in Pittsburgh, which isn't a lot, and it's only a 1-year deal. Obviously, if they decide to make it a 2 or 3 year deal, it'll be that. But if they want out after 1, they can get out. And I said, why can't we do something like that? I still don't know the particulars of, or I don't. Maybe you guys do. And I haven't been searching for it because I don't really care enough. But I don't know the particulars of the deal for Cody Barton, and what it compares to Cole Holcomb's deal in terms of that 1 year, right? But it is what it is. Barton's here. We're going to see what he has to offer. We're going to see what they do at linebacker because You know, if there was ever a position that we thought we'd be hearing a free agent, you know, move being made at, it'd be linebacker, right? Clearly that hasn't been done. I assume the draft is where they're going to make another move at linebacker, but I assumed the same thing last year, and they did not draft a linebacker. So I don't want to assume anything, but that's the assumption that I am going to make going into the draft if nothing else gets done in free agency, which I don't think anything's going to be done. There are some guys still available. One name that sticks out like a sore thumb that I'm really not interested in, even though he's young and talented. I've heard that he's a little bit of a head case and a little bit standoffish and maybe not the best locker room guy. But Devin Bush is like 25, 26 years old. I mean, super young. Still didn't pick up his fifth-year option. They were very disappointed with the way his career's trajectory went. This is a guy they traded up to number 10 overall to select, and then they ended up not even picking up his fifth-year option. So it tells you a lot about how they felt about Devin Bush. So I don't know if I'm interested in that, but if you're talking about from a talent standpoint, a guy that can run, Devin Bush checks off all the boxes. If they were interested, I think they would have already attacked, you know, him and brought him in and got him signed up. The league has spoken on him. Not that he won't end up on a team, but this first wave of free agency has come and gone, and no one signed Devin Bush. So I think that speaks volumes to the tape that he's put out there and how teams feel about him moving forward. He'll probably sign somewhere, one-year deal, prove it, that type of thing. And it could even be here in Washington. I doubt it. But if anything else happens at linebacker, I think it's ultimately going to be in the draft. But again, I didn't think we were going to do anything else. Maybe a running back. I've been told, you know, touting Jerick McKinnon as a guy that would fit here perfectly, hand in glove, a guy that knows the offense that Bieniemy is very comfortable with. That's the kind of guy that I thought we would sign. And then here we are talking about a defensive tackle and Abdullah Anderson. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll come back. If anything happens, you know where you'll find me. But more likely than not, we'll reconvene on Monday and talk more about the moves of this team, what direction they're heading in, and we'll start to turn our focus towards the draft. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You know what it is. It's the Command Post. Post up. Take command. You guys, have a good one, and take care.
LouieTeeNetwork.